Federal Workforce Fallout is sponsored by Prince George's Community College.
Thanks for watching Federal Workforce Fallout. I'm Larry Miller. More than 10% of the federal workforce was slashed last year. The unexpected cuts have been especially hard on our region, as many of our neighbors have been impacted. It's prompted some former federal workers to take action, even run for elected office. One such candidate is doing that in Northern Virginia. Michael Duffin is a Democratic candidate for Virginia's 8th Congressional District. He was once a longtime federal worker. But when he lost his job, he said that he felt the need to stand up for himself and for other federal workers like him. Michael Duffin, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right, so Michael, you are running for the Democratic nomination for Virginia's 8th Congressional District, correct?
Absolutely.
So walk me through why you, why now?
When I was riffed last July, I felt that the Democratic leadership had not fought hard enough for us, and that we needed one of our own to run for office to put a spotlight on what the treatment that federal employees are experiencing.
And so to get people up to speed, you worked at the State Department for many years, counterterrorism, correct?
Counterterrorism.
And sort of what did that entail?
I worked on violence prevention programs, and so I worked with communities around the world to promote resilience. Particularly in places where the Islamic State had targeted young men and women for radicalization and recruitment.
That's a very niche and I'd imagine important sort of work that you were
Absolutely.
doing there at the State Department. And like so many, we lost thousands of federal workers in 2025. I think estimates have us, well over 300,000 or so, about a 10% reduction in total. You were a part of that, you say. Clearly, there was so much going on at the time in terms of the way that the administration was approaching these RIFs, these reductions in force. Walk us through your experience in terms of how you got caught up in the RIF process.
Working in counterterrorism, I thought that my job was safe. And then I found out April of last year that it wasn't. And that really was a light bulb that went on in my mind that we need advocates for federal employees. And I felt that the current representative, the incumbent, has not been fighting for us. And so I had an idea, a thought of running for office. When we were officially riffed last July, I walked out of the State Department. I held a sign up that said, "Diplomacy matters, feds matter." That moment went viral. It was broadcast live on a lot of TV stations, and it was in a lot of newspaper coverage. And I felt that I had an opportunity to spotlight what we were going through.
And what do you think people were missing? And in all of the coverage that we saw and the interviews that we had, what do you think people were missing about federal workers and the impact that those RIFs were having on them and their families at the time?
Well, in terms of the overall impact, the federal government, it's a very complicated organization, and it's hard for any one person to understand exactly what's going on. And so the Trump administration has used that to their advantage to dismantle vital programs. Personally, I've seen friends and neighbors who have lost their jobs, their benefits, and they can't afford to live in Northern Virginia, so they've been forced to put their homes up for sale. So seeing friends and neighbors having to sell to move out of this area, we love this area. We need advocates who can help bring back those jobs, because the private sector is not absorbing the people who lost their federal jobs.
Have you been able to find another job after you left the State Department?
I started looking for a job. I'm not wealthy, and so it's very tough at this point. I have 3 master's degrees. I'm focusing on the campaign right now, but the reality for me is right after the primary, I do have to find employment, and it's very scary out there.
You've been very critical of the current representation, and that would be the incumbent Congressman Don Beyer, who represents Virginia's 8th Congressional and has for more than a decade at this point. Why do you feel that he hasn't been a strong advocate for federal workers?
He's been in office since 2015, and it was at that time that Donald Trump announced his run for presidency. During that time, he's been lambasting federal employees, calling us the deep state. And the representative in the 8th Congressional District, being one of the largest, if not the largest district with federal employees, that person, that representative, needs to be pushing back against that narrative, and they need to be the spokesperson, if you will, for federal employees on national TV, explaining why these programs that we worked on were vital and why our expertise is vital.
And you felt like you haven't heard anything from him as it relates specifically to those points that you just laid out?
I did not feel that when I was riffed last July, and I don't feel it today.
And so what do you feel voters would get from a candidate like yourself? If you were to win the primary and move on and win the general, what sort of advocate would you be for federal workers, but for all of those that are represented under Virginia's 8th Congressional?
Well, we need advocates, and Democrats, most of them have the same priorities, but their priorities are in different order. For me, the number one issue, it's reinstating federal employees. And so that's the thing when I'm on interviews, whether it's your program or another, I'm going to be talking about that first and foremost. And obviously climate change, affordability are big priorities of mine as well, but it's championing those issues. It's passing legislation or advocating, building coalitions. And I learned that in my 12 years at the State Department that if you want to pass an initiative, it doesn't happen overnight. You have to engage the other side of the aisle. You have to engage the public. And hopefully the stars align and your legislation passes. But it takes a lot of hard work. And so for me, it's advocating for federal employees, number one, because if those jobs do not come back, whether it's 25% of the jobs or 50 or 75%, ideally it's 100%. But if we don't get those jobs back, our economy is going to be further devastated.
Now, the Trump administration has been clear that these cuts were to make the government more efficient, that they were getting rid of waste, as they've described it, within the federal workforce, and that these cuts were going to make the federal government more agile in its ability to respond to the needs of the American people. Do you see it the way that they've seen it?
Absolutely not. And so myself and fellow State Department employees who were riffed last year, we've been tracking the number of contract positions that have been advertised. Those cost more than the full-time employees that we were. And I saw in my bureau, the Bureau of Counterterrorism, where they laid off 12 people, and they're currently advertising a contractor position, which requires them to pay a fee for a contracting company to oversee that person whom they're hiring. And so that's an example of government waste. And we've been trying to document that as much as possible, where the talking point for the Trump administration is that they're saving money, but the reality is that they're spending more money.
All right. Clearly there are a lot of options for voters in this race. You are going up against several candidates, but one in particular, Congressman Beyer, who has been the representative now for well over 10 years, is well regarded, well liked by many within Virginia's 8th Congressional. Do you feel like you're going up against the behemoth almost in this race?
I have, yes and no. The money, it's impossible for me to compete against him. He's one of the wealthiest people in Congress. He also has access to many wealthy donors. My base, there are people who are unemployed, people who are struggling to get by. And so that helps me at the ballot box as a candidate coming from the working class. I pride myself on being authentic, and I think that voters will recognize that. However, it is very difficult to defeat an incumbent, and when you have a crowded challenger field, it makes it even more difficult.
All right. So, Michael, thank you for coming in. We wish you all the best with your race and your candidacy. We know we'll probably be checking in with you a couple of more times as we get ready for Election Day, which I believe is in August, correct?
August 4th.
August 4th. Of course, we'll be watching. Michael, good to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. The job cuts to the federal workforce have had a significant impact on the regional economy. Glenora Haskins with Brookings Metro explains just how bad it's been.
We have sort of a lot of headlines as it relates specifically to the national workforce. And there was a lot of concern, too, about the impact that the reductions of force that we saw in the federal government was going to have on the region specifically. And some data certainly gave us an indication of that. But it looks like, according to recent data that we've received from the DMV Monitor, that things potentially maybe are a bit worse than what we initially thought.
Yes, it's been really difficult up until now to get a comprehensive forecast of what the long-term impacts of federal downsizing were going to be on the DMV's labor force, right? Earlier last year, or even before the 2024 election, officials, both, elected and, appointed in government, both in DC and Maryland and Virginia, had really differing opinions about what this was going to do to the economy overall and to the private sector. So on the Maryland side, you had a lot of hesitancy about the ability of the private sector to absorb some of these impacts, whereas the governor at the time in Virginia, former Governor Youngkin, felt very confident that the private sector would be able to absorb a lot of these anticipated layoffs. So with those kind of conflicting perspectives and such delay on federal data, it's been difficult to understand as these federal layoffs have unrolled over the last couple of months, whether those individuals were finding new jobs, whether private firms in the DMV were going to be able to create new jobs to absorb those workers, or whether unemployment would rise and skilled workers would be forced to either look elsewhere or retain extended periods of joblessness. This was further complicated by the fork, because some of these employees remained on federal payrolls for several months after they were officially let go or relinquished from their job responsibilities. Now that we have BLS data from last October onward, we can see for the first time that these impacts were quite severe and quite long lasting. So even though the first of these layoffs began in earnest in early 2025, we still see at the beginning of this year extremely elevated unemployment and extremely steep job loss, both in the federal sector and across the private sector. And so while that's unfortunate and scary, it's not necessarily surprising, because historically, the private sector in the DMV has been really reliant and complementary to the federal government through federal contracting and small business enterprise. And so as the federal government has downsized and relinquished its presence in the region, the private sector has suffered as well. So there's been these cascading impacts on the labor force that have been extraordinarily difficult to overcome.
And so where does that leave us now? In terms of noticing and documenting the impact, does that leave us sort of in a position where what we are seeing in terms of the job losses, both on the private and public side, are having sort of these overwhelming economic impacts on the regional economy as a whole?
Yes, this leaves us at a level of employment loss greater than every other major metropolitan area in the United States. So if you measure job loss year over year from December of 2024 through December of 2025, when you look at metropolitan areas with more than 1 million people nationwide, the DMV lost more jobs than any of them. And that was heavily caused by losses in the federal sector, right? But not offset by gains in the private sector, because private sector has been, employment has been declining as well. Businesses want to relocate and set up shop here because there's so much opportunity for dynamism, startup activity, and contracting opportunities. So I don't want to suggest that all is lost. I do want to convey or emphasize that it's very important now for local officials in DC, Maryland, and Virginia to start strategizing for how they are going to backfill some of these losses from the federal government, right? We're never going to be able to replace all of these jobs with one-to-one matches, and we're never going to be able to backfill all of the losses of federal contracting dollars. But we can coordinate to invest smartly in job creation and talent attraction to enable employees that have lost their jobs to better match to opportunities in the DMV so they don't feel as though they have to relocate elsewhere for work. That's a strategy that is absolutely adoptable now. It's not too late. And so therefore, I don't want to be pessimistic. It's time for action. And I'm hoping that the steep losses that we're seeing in this data provide some sort of catalyst to that.
All right, Ms. Haskins, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
If you are looking for a job, there is a clear art to networking. Some are really good at it. Others could use some assistance. Bill Fitzgerald, CEO of Fitzdrake Search, is back to explain how to network effectively.
All right, Bill Fitzgerald joining us again, author of the book, Looking for a Job Sucks. And I don't think we can put a bigger emphasis on that in terms of what we see nowadays. Since the last time we saw you, and I have to tell you, we've gotten a lot of great feedback about that episode where we went through the resume. So many people reached out to us saying that it was just really good information. So thank you again for that. You've really been on the boots on the ground for helping our federal workers, our former federal workers, make the transition to new opportunities. There's some things that you're seeing that you want to pinpoint to really help elevate their game and help them get prepared.
Yeah. So I'll even reference a meeting I had this week, Larry. I met with a group of folks from the State Department. And one of the questions that came up in the group was related to networking. And I won't even say it was a question, it was more of a comment, which was all of my connections are in the federal government. How could networking possibly help me?
Mhm.
Which rather than jump in and immediately answer that question, what I did was think about it because what they were saying, what they were asking about, told me they really didn't understand what networking is really all about. They've got this image that networking is like a transaction, something you do quickly and you move on. And the fact is, you folks in this position have to reframe this from I'm going to go network with people, which sounds very transactional, very mechanical, to I'm going to go out and I'm going to nourish some relationships, rekindle some relationships, maintain some relationships, and I'm going to reach out to people, not asking them for a job, which ends a conversation almost immediately if you ever get the conversation, but I'm going to ask them for advice. And the whole purpose, Larry, of having this conversation is really twofold. One is to get some helpful information that'll help you with this search, but to also continue the conversation with someone else. So let me share something
Okay.
with you. Can you see that, Larry?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
All right. So this is a template that I've written, and I'll show you where I can find them. About how to reach out to somebody. And the title of this is asking for advice from people you stay in touch regularly. And that is really the key with this whole process. You're not reaching out for a job, you're reaching out for help. You're reaching out for guidance. You're reaching out for advice. And my experience is that when you do that in a way that I'm going to describe, most people really want to do what they can. But again, if you go out initially with, hey, Larry, I'm looking for a job in journalism. Do you have one there at Channel 9?
Right.
They're not going to get back to me, or it's going to be a really short conversation. So here's the message, and you and I are going to role play this a little bit. Here's the message I might send to you if you're somebody that I've stayed in touch regularly, and I want to connect on the fact that I'm engaged in this process. So hi, Diane, or hi, Larry.
Mhm.
Good morning. I hope your week is going well. I'm following up on our conversation for 4 months ago. All right. So I'm providing some context.
Right.
I'm reaching out to let you know that I've decided to explore new opportunities. I believe I'm ready for a change and want to start looking. You have always provided helpful guidance, and I would appreciate your advice on the following. And this is critical, Larry. You're developing questions that will help you with your job search, but will also give you the opportunity to have this conversation because there's 4 questions that are absolutely critical to make these conversations work. So these 4 questions, I mean, they obviously don't apply to you and I, but these questions are what you generate when you send this email. And the idea is make it easy for people to help you.
Mhm.
Don't put them on the spot. You want to get their perspective. You want to get their help and advice. So you ask these questions in an email. Appreciate your time and assistance. Let me know some days and times that are convenient for you. I'll do my best to work around your schedule, Bill. So that's an example of how you reach out. It may be a little different if you haven't kept in touch with somebody. But what you're doing here, Larry, is you're setting the agenda. So I, as the receiver, I don't necessarily have to prepare. I may want to help you.
Mhm.
Makes it easy because it's not going to be a surprise as to what we're going to talk about. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's imagine that I sent you an email like that.
Okay.
And I've asked 2 or 3 of the questions. And I'm getting around to my last one. And I asked you a question like, hey, Larry, one of the things I've been wondering about is how is AI changing the world of journalism? It seems like it must be having some kind of impact. What do you see happening, Larry?
I see that there is greater AI integration
Oh,
into the workflow. I
mm,
also see that there is a greater expectation that um, journalists are familiar with, understand how to utilize AI on a daily basis,
yeah.
and that it really is incorporated into the way in which we approach storytelling.
Okay. So, I mean, it's real then. I mean, it's
Mhm.
happening.
Yeah,
It's part. Okay.
it's here.
All right. It's here. All right. Well, listen, I really appreciate your time today. Just a couple other questions I wanted to ask. One is, who else should I talk to? Who else should I know that might have an opinion about the marketplace, about our journalism industry, that might be able to offer some guidance for somebody like me that's looking to make a transition?
Yeah, I would definitely say talk with, you know, uh, I would say Miss Hernandez. She's a hiring manager.
Oh,
You want to talk to those people that are in positions that can actually go out and
okay.
initiate hiring. Those are the people that you want to have conversations with first.
Is there someone specific in your network and your colleagues that you might recommend that I can reach out to?
Yeah, absolutely. I can get you a name and get your
Oh,
contact
great.
information and send it over to you.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. I'd really appreciate that. Would it be okay if I follow up in 4 to 6 weeks just to give you an update on how things are going, what's new, what's changed, anything like that? Is that okay?
Absolutely. Yeah. And
Okay.
then that way too, if I hear something and
Yeah,
I'll think about you and I'll circle back with you.
that'd be great. And I guess lastly, I actually have done a lot of research on AI content generation relative to media in journalism. If that's something you'd ever want to grab a cup of coffee and talk about, I've got some resources, some examples. I'd be happy to share those at some point.
No, that's great. Listen, as you know,
Okay.
the more information we have, the better for all of us, right?
All right. All right. Well, listen, thanks very much. So, you're going to close it out, but here's the key. I asked you 4 questions, Larry, and
Mhm.
this is how you extend the conversation because think of it like a spider diagram. I
Mhm.
talk to you, you tell me to go talk to somebody else. That person goes talk to somebody else. There's this whole concept in networking called loose ties. It's been
Mhm.
researched, it's out there. And what it will tell you is if you're a first degree connection to me, a close connection to me,
Mhm.
chances are this is not where the opportunity is going to come. The opportunity is going to come from the person you refer me to, or the person that person refers me to, or so on and so on. Networking is the key, Larry. But I would reframe it for people. It's about relationships. It's about connections. It's about asking for help, being a little bit vulnerable because sometimes people don't like to do that.
Yeah.
But the more you're able to operate this way, the more you're going to start to hear about opportunities that otherwise you're never going to know about.
Well, it's taking job seekers on average well over 6 months in many cases to find a job. Dr. Vanessa Weaver, with CEO of Alignment Strategy, says that there are ways to stay positive and encouraged during the extended job search.
Not only have people lost a job, but they feel unappreciated, not valued, and the career that they invested in is just been presented like it just wasn't that important in the first place. And so you have a lot of this. So it's recognizing, number one, that you're having these feelings and then saying, okay, what are the feelings that I have? And then I would suggest that an individual track how long these feelings are occurring. I mean, do they come like every now and then? Or are they like with you every day or with you hours at a time? And then how do they impact you when they're with you? So it's really having that recognition because that then will influence what type of response you have to that. Do you try to like wait it out and then do some reorganizing your thinking? We talk about mindset, but it doesn't mean that, hey, I need to really, number one, acknowledge what I'm doing and then create a plan like you're talking about. And then in creating a plan, what are the first 2 or 3 steps that I'm committing to do? Like, for example, am I committing to go to LinkedIn or wherever you might go and look for jobs and then actually sit down and respond to the jobs. And people think this is easy, but it's not. When you're feeling overwhelmed and you're feeling like not really sure if the skills you had are going to be valued in the marketplace, it could be scary and it could make it difficult for you to take that first step. So creating a plan is like acknowledging, what do I need to do to make that first step? And I'm saying write down 3 things and then commit to do those 3 things in 2 days, for example, and do them. But if you find that you can't do that if you just immobilize because of the anxiety that you're feeling or the fear that you might be facing, then that's time to go and get some help, to talk to a trusted friend or go to a psychologist, or if there are services that are made available that you can access in the community, do that, but get some help. That's really important. And getting help, recognize that you shouldn't feel embarrassed or ashamed by it, because your reaction is not unusual and a whole lot of people are having it. Believe me, a whole lot of people are feeling that. And then after that, then it's about implementing a plan. And it's not about trying to do everything on that plan at once and holding yourself accountable to 10 steps. It's about saying, okay, I've created the plan. Now I'm going to do the first 2 steps, and then indicate a date when you're going to do those first 2 steps. This is if you're trying to manage it by yourself. If you're not managing it by yourself, but you're going to a coach or to a counselor or to a trusted friend, then create some commitments between the 2 of you to manage that. The other thing you can do is set more realistic expectations, because a lot of the stress that we often feel is that we have these expectations that aren't aligned. You say, this is how I used to do things, and now I'm in a position where I can't afford gifts. So not putting yourself through a guilt trip because you can't afford gifts, but create a different set of expectations. So as if your family, or if it's your friends or your children, to say, this is kind of a different Christmas that we're going to have, or different Hanukkah that we're going to have, or whatever your holiday season is. This is going to be different. And this is what you can expect from me. This is the way I want to celebrate it with you. And it's not about how much money I can spend, but it's about the quality of the experience that we have with each other, and to have that kind of conversation. And most of the time people really get that, and a lot of times our kids would prefer to have quality time with us and to have a whole lot of gifts that they are toys that they play with, when they rather prefer to have time with you. So, change your expectations, negotiate your expectations, explain your expectations with others. And then, in fact, don't put yourself under the pressure of doing that. And so I know, like, sometimes, like when I get stressed, I want to go out and buy something. I know that's kind of my thing. Buy a pair of shoes, in fact. I want to buy a pair of shoes. And so I have to step back and say, Vanessa, now what is buying this 50th pair of shoes? What are you telling yourself? What are you trying to handle? So when you want to set the kind of financial levels that you can actually function at, which might be nothing. You might need to be spending nothing. Then when you want to go out there and do an impulse spend, then ask yourself, why am I doing an impulse spend? What is it that I'm trying to satisfy within myself in doing that? And once you have that kind of talk, then you don't do it. And it works for me, because I can see a pair of shoes that I really want, that I say I deserve because I did this and that, and just because I can't do it now, I'm gonna buy it anyway. So I just say, Vanessa, do you really need that? And what is it that you're trying to solve right now? And when I ask myself that, Larry, and I really have to kind of think about it, I really recognize I don't need the 4th pair of red shoes, right? I don't need them. And so that will help you manage that. And then again, just allow yourself some grace. Allow yourself some grace to say, I'm not feeling really great about, my financial situation. I'm feeling really bad. I'm in mourning about this job loss, but this too shall pass. And so maybe one of the things I tell people is that sometimes you have to learn just to sit with it.
Our thanks to Dr. Weaver. You can count on WUSA 9 to stay on top of the reductions to the federal workforce, those affected, and what it means for our communities. In the meantime, scan the QR code on your screen. It will take you to a special section of WUSA9.com dedicated to our coverage of this story. And of course, we'll keep you updated right here on federal workforce fallout. Thanks for being here. Take care, and we'll see you again soon.
You've learned a lot in life, on the job, in the military, raising a family. At Prince George's Community College, that experience can count as college credit. You could earn up to 15 college credits towards your degree just for what you already know. Eligible Prince George's County grads can even attend tuition-free with the Promise Scholarship. So, what's your game plan? Turn your journey into a degree at Prince George's Community College.